Hello, everybody. We're very happy to have you all here. We're using our new technology tonight. For the first time, we have lavalier microphones, so they can't budge until it's time for them to talk. But we're really happy to have a return visit. I think some of you are either friends with or came to the last Armchair Traveler program, which was on Namibia, that Ellen and Jeanette did. But in case you don't know them, I'll tell you a few things about them. Jeanette Gauthier Downs is the Director of Instructional Technology for the Wainscott Commons.
You know what? I'm not that anymore.
Okay.
I should have updated
Okay,
that.
that's
I work in
okay.
Hicksville Public Schools now.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, we do know that over the past 30 years, Jeanette has traveled the country and the world. And we do know also that she lived in San Diego, Santa Barbara, Manhattan, and now lives in Hampton Bays. She has spent summers in Corsica, taught special ed teachers in Bhutan, toured the schools of Cuba, Vietnam, and Namibia. She is thrilled to be here tonight and share her Peru experiences with all of us. Ellen Bialo, who's also in the front row, is CEO, are you still?
Yes.
President and founder of the Interactive Educational Systems Design, an educational market and product development research company recognized in K-20 publishing as a teacher in research and analysis. She founded the DOLOS,
The dolls.
the dolls, the dirty old ladies of software,
That's it.
a women's professional organization that helps women who work in the business of education help one another. Ellen received her graduate degree in educational psychology from Teachers College at Columbia University. She lives in Hampton Bays and still spends some time in the city. Travel has always been a big part of her life, and she hopes that it continues to be. So please welcome Jeanette Gauthier Downs and Ellen Bialo.
Oh, yeah. That's us.
Hi. Oh, what a great trip. Have any of you been to Peru yet? Yet? All right, well, it's going to be an adventure when you do go.
So to start, so actually before we went to Peru, we went to the Galapagos first, but we're not going to talk about that at all. But, you know, it's kind of close from Ecuador, so we kind of did this at the tail end of our trip. We spent 5 or 6 days there. And it's a really foreign culture. And it's both modern and old at the same time, and we'll show you some of that. So this is where, when we started our trip, this is the main cathedral in Cusco. And all the slides that we'll show you are in Cusco or around Cusco. We had a kind of private guide and driver, which is very inexpensive to get there. So they spent the whole time with us in a van, just the two of us. And we got to go to some really interesting places. So we'll talk a little bit about this cathedral. It's quite old, as you can see. Some of it was damaged by fire and then rebuilt. And it was rebuilt on the foundation that was constructed by the Incas. And we're going to talk a lot about the Incas today. And here you can see the original foundation of that cathedral. So what you saw before was built on top of this. So you may notice the size of the stones. The Incas didn't have the wheel, but somehow they lifted these stones. There are theories about how they did it, and we can talk a little bit about that. But
You can't really tell, but this is probably 2 or 3 feet high, and then 2 or 3 feet deep. So these things weighed like 50 tons. Now this is before the wheel.
yeah, and you'll see some other larger ones later. But just, I think for us, it's just to appreciate the beauty of what they constructed. And so wait, I have to use my fortune now. Does everybody know what this shape is? I was a former math teacher, so this is the math part of the lesson. What shape is that? Anybody? What is it? Did I hear it? Start trapezoid. Who said that? All right, you get it. Okay, it's a trapezoid. Why did they use trapezoid? because that gives the most strength to the stones that are above it. It distributes the stress at an angle as opposed to using a rectangle or a square. So you'll see this in many of the places we go. Okay. Another cathedral, Jeanette?
This is still that Cathedral de Art. It's
Right.
like this, Cusco is not a big town, and everything revolves around this, it's the, what's the name of this?
Cathedral?
Yeah, the front part was for the military.
Oh, right, yeah.
And
Oh, the
so-
Plaza de Armas, right.
Thank you, I know.
Right.
So every night we were there was some festival going on, and they danced in all their, garb, from their culture. And even some people still wear the cultured clothes as kind of a status symbol.
Right. And you'll
They
see,
wear those, you might have seen some Peruvian people in your life, and they've got this outfit on, and the women wear this top hat, and the color of the top hat means something. So they were always there dancing, having festivals. So then we went into the market, and one of the big things about Peru was their cultivation of corn. So corn can grow at high elevations. So what they did was they created these big, they looked like amphitheaters.
and actually we'll get to that.
And we'll get to that, right. But they figured out how to cultivate corn, like not just cultivate it, they were able to create strains of corn that would grow at higher and higher elevations.
And it's
That
actually,
was their big,
yeah, and it's actually a major part of the diet. This looks a little bit like the corn we tried to grow this summer, I have to say.
and it tasted like, just like it looked.
Yeah, anyway, so it's some of the other things that we saw at the markets.
So have you been to markets where the the meat is hanging all day long? And then at the end of the day, what's not sold is refrigerated. It's like, really? Now? What difference does it make? Disgusting. Of course, we ate it.
Well, I didn't eat it, Jeanette ate it. Well, what do you think they used to preserve the meat? Yeah, salt, and we're gonna talk about salt as well, right?
Yep, and they seem to have so many different fruits and vegetables. I mean, just the markets were overflowing. But probably the primary food, can you go to the next one?
Yeah, but I was gonna say
Oh,
also,
yeah.
a lot of different kinds of corn. I mean, there was corn everywhere.
110 different kinds of potato. Potato was one of their staples as well. And they would dry their potatoes. So each type of potato would be dried for a different amount of time, and each color would be slightly different, whether it was dried for 30 days or 60 days or 100 days. And these, they said, will last for years, like this.
Right, so actually.
They didn't take the cover off. They didn't scrape them. That's what they look like after they've been dried.
So you can actually see here, it's a little hard to tell how many different types here. But when Jeanette said 100, there were at least 100 types of potatoes.
I think they said 110.
Yeah, potatoes, corn, and quinoa, 3 staples of their diet, okay? All right? Cheese, it wasn't very interesting cheese. They didn't have like camembert and brie. They just had like basic, white cheeses.
Hard, goat,
Right, no
mostly
blue
hard.
cheese, no blue cheese either, right? Okay.
Salt was a huge part, and we'll talk about salt because once you get up into the traditional areas that are still controlled by the indigenous people, because there's still like some people of Inca still have lines of Inca, they're given a place where they can get salt, where they can actually harvest salt. And so this is from that area, and all the different color salts are at different times of the scraping and the harvesting of the salt.
So here's some bread, which is a little different than our bread. And here's some of the raw salt that you can see on the left.
Now that's mine salt. That's not going to be like the salt that we're going to show you. They both had mine salt as well as salt that came from highly salinated rivers. A river that ran from the top of Machu Picchu.
Right. Okay. Flowers.
Everywhere. Now, you don't drink the water in Peru. So all these delicious things look so good, but we couldn't touch them. But you see, all the towns, they all went poof, straight up. They built right up. And everything is terraced. Everywhere you look is terraced.
So I guess what I wanted to say at the beginning, and I didn't, is that we were in the Peruvian Andes. I mean, we were really high up in the mountains. We were at 11,000 feet. So we brought medication with us because you get very sick from the altitude there. So we needed to take it in advance, 24 hours in advance. I think we took it twice a day, and I can't remember what it was called, but all the physicians kind of knew what it was. And most of the people there had been taking the medication, although in the morning occasionally you'd see somebody at breakfast who was kind of white, and you knew they didn't have the proper pills. But the altitude really does get to you. They give you this tea that's made from, how do they say, coca leaves, which is something that the indigenous people used in order to give them a lot of energy and to keep going. We didn't find it that effective, but we tried it.
What was the altitude?
Yeah, but even
11,000.
the altitude in Cusco was 11,000, but when we got down to Machu Picchu, it was down to 7,800 or something like that. But I took the medicine, and I never get sick. I'm like a bull. You know, I eat all the street meat. I'm like that person. I got such a bad case of altitude sickness one night that I wanted to jump out. My head felt like it was just exploding. And I was sick, and then the next day I was fine. I was back to good. So.
I was going to say also, we were actually, as we were traveling around Cusco, a couple of places we were at almost 13,000 feet. I can't remember which town it was, but as we drove around, I mean, you're literally going up and down these steep mountains. Okay.
So it was almost a relief to get to start to climb Machu Picchu.
Yeah. Anybody know what animal this is? My guess. Not a lamb. Close. It's a baby alpaca.
Oh.
All right, it's a baby alpaca. They're very cute.
And the alpacas are really controlled. People can't sell the alpacas without, it's a registration. So when they're sheared, that goes into a communal shearing, and everything is extremely controlled when it comes to the alpacas. And the next one up, it's called
well, there's alpaca, llama, and vicuña, which is the most kind of expensive
Right.
kind, whatever. Oh, and Jeanette's jacket over there is vicuña. So if you want to take a look at that, it's quite beautiful. That was the one thing she got
Yes.
when we were there. And also my slippers are over there. They are alpaca, if you want to see.
That's kind of the traditional
Yeah.
weave. It's soft though.
Good look, I can point to it.
Yeah.
I'm into the pointer. All right, so here is women in traditional dress, as you can see, that Jeanette mentioned. This is another cathedral in the main square in Cusco. Here's Jeanette sitting on the steps. People tend to gather here. Again, quite old, beautiful, and another view of Cusco from the square, again, looking up the hill.
Right. So now you start to see, starting to get up into the ruins area, and you see all but they had to start fixing it in places.
Right, so this is where they restored it, right? These are the original rocks, and here, they're starting to repair, also they're supporting here. But it's amazing. This stuff was built in the 15th century. I mean, so you have to sort of get like how old it is, right? The 15th century. This whole building thing that was done by the Incas was done by Pachacutec, who was one of the Incan emperors who had a vision for what the Incas could create, and they had so many people to do the building. Do you want to talk a little bit about?
Well, he built it because he wanted to create a safe place, some place where they couldn't get attacked.
Well, that's not the teacher.
Right, right, okay. Then you keep going, that's the place. But this whole area was built by Pachacutec. Take it where you want to go, man.
Okay.
I'll take that part.
Okay, great. Let's just go on.
So they had just llamas around, they weren't for anything more than show.
But you could see the fur, right?
The pet.
And the shearing, right? And that's one of the main products there.
I wasn't leaning on it.
She wasn't touching it. We
I
did a
wasn't.
little,
I really wasn't.
trunk
I
load.
wouldn't do that.
Okay. All right, more ruins, and you can see how they did this building into the hill. They terraced everywhere because the land is so mountainous. The only way they could make use of the land was to terrace. So you'll see.
So then it's terraced, but during the time, these were all growing coca for the most part. Coca was a biggie. It's basically how that whole thing was built. Because another thing that we'll begin to understand is that this wasn't done by slaves. It was probably one of the biggest architectural feats where no slaves were involved.
And no wheels.
And no wheels, yes.
Okay, these are the rocks Jeanette was referring to before. The ones you saw at the temple were small compared to these. I mean, these weigh hundreds of tons. Hundreds of tons. We don't know how they got up there. But also you could see how they fit, how they carved these rocks so they would fit together. And then...
With no mortar, they would just perfectly fit together. They said even at the time you couldn't put a piece of paper in between the rocks.
And we'll show you later, the guy was kind of educating us how they did this. They would take advantage of the natural cracks in a rock. And we'll show you one of the rock quarries where they actually found these stones and they started to work. They tunneled through the rocks. Go ahead.
No, nothing.
Okay.
You see how deep it is.
Yeah.
So you know, you can imagine how heavy that rock is that got moved there for the most part.
This is just a cute little dog.
Yeah, well, they're funny. They have these hairless dogs there. There are a bunch of them.
And they're running around the street everywhere. All right. Quinoa.
Quinoa, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They walk around with these plastic bags for breakfast filled with quinoa and like, I don't know, egg, whipped eggs and stuff like that. That's breakfast, lunch. More quinoa, dinner, more quinoa. It grows only grows at high elevations, and it's really everywhere. High protein. People there seem to be very healthy. They weren't having any trouble walking up that.
Right. Oops, let's go back. Okay. Here's Jeanette,
Always
being
with my-
nice to the alpaca.
I love animals. Yeah, the llamas were mean. Llamas were spitting. They were not nice. They kept them back. And then this is how they die. Every one of these, this turned into that blue. It's all just stuff that they gathered. Little flowers
For
and
the corn.
corn and a kind of lime.
So we actually went to a place where they did a demo and we saw them dying. And we'll show you later some of
And
them.
most often all they added was salt
Right.
to the mixture, and they put the herb or little flour, whatever it was, they mixed it up, and all of a sudden, and then they put the wool in and it just absorbed the color. So bright.
Yeah, and we'll show you some of those colors later. Here again is another street, and it's interesting, a lot of the doors were painted blue. And what we learned is that blue was the color of royalty. So this is kind of like a legacy that people continue to do that, right? Okay. This is a place called Sacsayhuaman, and our guide would always pronounce it as sexy woman, because he said that's how the Americans pronounce it. But this was an amazing agricultural, would you say, honey, experimental?
Yeah, it was really an experimental place. They brought sand in so that they could, well, they were building these, they would put sand behind so that it wouldn't knock over the walls. They got the sand a couple miles away. So, we're still talking no wheels, no cars. They had to carry all that sand from another location to bring it here to create this. Then they would, little by little, begin to move the corn up and try to cultivate it so it grow at higher and higher elevations. And I know it was probably one of the first agricultural experiments that was ever uncovered. And they really knew it was because of all the artifacts that they found underneath. They found all the corn seeds. They found this really, very intricately designed layers. You see here where the workers would go and they'd run up the stairs, and everything was made based on the length of an arm, the engineer's arm, or the length of the runner's legs.
Right, so how did they get up and down? I mean, this is, I forget how deep this is, but it's quite deep. So these little
Yeah, these are
staircases-
probably 7 or 8 feet high.
That's how they got up and down. And the idea was what can grow at this altitude, what can grow at this altitude.
And how can we make it grow, take this plant that won't grow, how can we change it? How can we mix it with other seeds?
Pretty flowers.
Those are all the flowers that they also use.
All right, now, this is very cool. We went to a place called Moray, where they harvested salt. So we have lots of pictures of salt. And the way this worked is, do you want to talk about this one? Okay, the way this worked is, there's a river. No, wait, go back, hold it.
Exciting.
Hold on, I'm
That's
so
the river.
excited. So there's a river, and that they discovered, you don't think rivers as being salty, but somehow it was brackish, it's not really clear where the salt came from. But salt started to collect. So they,
That is like 52% salinity,
right.
and it's just running through from the top of the mountain.
So they directed the water from the top of the mountain down into these, I think of it as little patties, right? And the people each got a piece where they could harvest the salt on their own. So what you see here, like this one hadn't been harvested in a while, they scrape the salt off, then more water comes in, the sun comes in and dries it, they collect the salt. And Jeanette, you know about this whole family thing and how it determined how much land they got or how
Still to
many?
this day, the women, their children get a plot of salt. And then it's always passed down, and then a child gets it, and then she can, when her daughters also get a plot of salt
Where's some?
to this day. And sons.
Right, but
Probably 10, they were all different sizes. They were kind of, some were like maybe 25 by 25, some were maybe 15 by 15. They were weird shapes. They were, and they were still building. You still see like they're now coming down the hill because they're running out of space.
and
But it
also,
had to be an Inca descent. It had to be a woman of Incan descent.
right, and the more children you had, the more space you got, right? That's how they divvied up the land. A little more pictures of the salt here. I mean, we were walking.
So that's
right-
just that river, and that's not snow, obviously.
Right,
That's
and we
salt.
were walking right along here, and it was pretty slippery too. So you can just see how much salt there was. So it was very cool.
But it's still really primitive. I mean, we have lots of machines, right? Do they really still need to be? This is one family that just got their salt out. Now they're carrying it up to here where it'll be processed. They'll get the money for it, and it'll be processed
Okay.
So is that something that happens annually or is it?
constantly,
Right.
all year round. All year round, right? So when they do one of those, they'll get 2 bags of salt. Then they refill it, they come back as it dries, depending on the season, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. They say they get about $10 a bag. So it's not a lot, but these were, it depended. When, as they took off the top, that was the clearest, whitest. Then as they went down to the next layer, then they got more of the minerals. And that's what was giving it the color. So, even now, you have to have the pink salt. It's got healing qualities, It's the minerals that are in there, so that would be true.
So now, Moray, which is where the salt was, is in an area outside of Cusco that's called the Sacred Valley. So there are a number of places in the Sacred Valley that we visited. And this is one called Ole Tatambo. And again, they all have different names, but they're all ruins that are basically go back to the Incas. And one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit in terms of the Incas, I mentioned that it was the 15th century, right? The Incas were at their height in the 15th century, all through the 1400s, but by the year 1530, they disappeared. How did they disappear? Anybody know? Who came in and conquered the Incas? The Spaniards came in. The Spaniards came in, but they only killed about 1/3 of them in this kind of war and the conquering. Another 1/3 of them died of smallpox, which I didn't know until we were there. So the Spaniards brought smallpox with them, kind of the way Columbus and whoever came brought it to the indigenous people here, right? So we bring our kind of illnesses with us and pass them on.
They have no antibodies for them.
Right, so very few of the Incas were left. So anyway, this is Ole Tatambo, and again, what do you see? You see mountains, and you see this incredible building that they put at the top of the mountains, how they got these rocks there, how they carved them, it's sort of a miracle to me.
Did you talk about how this was lost, that this was only rediscovered in 1911?
Well, should we wait till we get to Machu Picchu, because
Okay.
that's what they discovered that year. Okay, all right. So, you want to talk about this storage thing?
Sure. So they stored their food in the mountains. And everyone from the town could see that. They could see where their food was. Remember, they're not slaves. These are people who are going to come and work for a certain amount of time, like we might send our folks to the military. Then once they do their time, they can go back into their villages and they can have a family and expect that they're going to be fed by the community. And if they don't do their community service, nobody will take them in.
And there's no money, there was no money then.
It was all
You worked,
about
you got food. Okay.
So they built these, they're, all over, that's what's storing them, basically the grain.
And if everybody could look at that and see it full, everybody was happy, they knew that whoever was in charge was doing a good job and they were gonna make it through the winter. We were actually up in the ruins and this was just an incredible view. I mean, there were so many of these. We tried to pick out a few that you would like to see. Okay. Again, ruins, we did climb up some of these.
This is kind of what you're climbing up when you go there.
Yeah, you need to have good knees to go to Peru.
We
Okay,
didn't-
we were like a little iffy at
We didn't
times.
go on that 4-day trek, but we saw people coming back and they were saying things like, alcohol, bathroom, help me.
Yeah. So I want to notice, okay, you have the trapezoids again, see that? Again, to support. This is supporting all this stuff that's built up here. I mean, it's really like a marvel to me. So you see, again, more trapezoids everywhere, okay? So anyway, we have a lot more to show on Machu Picchu. But any questions so far, comments, observations? Similar to any places any of you have traveled or heard
Here,
about?
you have a question?
I was just saying.
What's the population?
Oh,
Sorry.
I have no idea what the population is. Do you know?
how many?
Yeah, population? I don't know. I can't really say. I mean, Cusco itself.
Modern population, at the time, there were between, at least in Machu Picchu, there were usually between 300 and 1,000 people there at any one time, at that time. I don't know how many people are there now.
I don't know either. Yeah, but Mary?
I was just curious about their diet, because you showed where they stored the food on the mountain. So that would be quinoa, potatoes, and corn.
That's right,
Mostly.
that's it.
No greens, and they grow any greens too? It's kind of arid or?
Not that we heard about. No,
I didn't see
not that we
any
heard
greens.
about.
And
any
meats,
greens.
and they had cheeses from
Go,
cows.
Oh, goat.
go.
And I guess the llamas or some of them had milk.
What did you folks eat?
As little as possible. I lost some
Yeah, I
weight.
wasn't so good with the food there. It was just like meat and quinoa and a potato, and there you go.
Yeah, we weren't that
We did go to a
popular.
really good, what was that restaurant, that Asian restaurant we went to?
Oh, yeah, that was toward the end, right, when we were, I think that was
A
what we were
a Peruvian,
in Lima.
yeah, oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we went to a restaurant in Lima. We decided okay, we're gonna have one good meal before we leave. So we found this great restaurant in Lima that sources all their food from the Andes, from the forest. And it was incredible. So it was all things that they get from the forest, things that we had never heard of. Things cooked in banana leaves and all kinds of interesting things. Yeah, not a lot of meat, though. Not a lot of meat at all. Okay.
Yeah, we'd go for the food.
Right, again, that trapezoid.
But like even Africa, I didn't go for the food, but it was really exciting food. I mean, when do you get to eat at a zebra?
What is
Or workout.
Okay, we have a question.
They
Yes.
cut or shape, they granite, you know what type of rock it is?
I think whatever they could find, whatever they found on the site. Some were granite, some were other things, and we're gonna get to a photo where we'll show you what the quarry looks like. Okay. Again, Oleta Tambo, we're still in the Sacred Valley and we're not at Machu Picchu yet, right? That's one of the goals, to get to Machu Picchu. But these people must have had incredible legs. I mean, just climbing up here when we're
Is that staircase then all the way up there? Like
All the
that
way
was
up.
on one mountain?
Yep.
yeah, all the way up.
Now, where was it that they had the women who had been buried in the,
Yeah, I don't think we got to that
Yeah,
yet. Right, right. So here you could see how they capture the water, which is quite beautiful. And you could see the snow up in the mountains. There's a lot of snow.
this was the water temple?
Yes, and we were there in
April.
April. So things are starting to melt. Okay. moss is starting to grow, okay. All right, so now, we're at Machu Picchu. Does anybody know anything about Machu Picchu? Okay, so this is what you wanted to talk about, the 1911 thing, right? Okay, cool.
So the only people who knew about Machu Picchu were the local people. They knew it was there. They always knew it was there. But nobody else knew it was there until 1911, when a British explorer,
Hisham something.
decided to go on an expedition and found an entrance. And it was that point they started to, the whole thing was covered in vegetation.
Hisham Bingham.
So until 1911, so for hundreds and hundreds of years, nobody went to the sacred grounds. Now, this is now one of the new 7 wonders of the world. I didn't know you knew that.
But his idea was he was going to go search for the lost city, or the lost cities that were supposedly there, right?
And they were.
Right, so,
And then it took them years to get all of the vegetation, just to be able to actually begin to see what was there. It was completely grown over.
right, yeah, and as Jeanette said, the locals knew it was there, but didn't really
They
venture
kept it
there.
a secret.
Yeah,
It was their secret.
right.
So you see it, imagine this now had roofs, right? These are all the buildings, and the only thing that disintegrated literally was the roofs off it. When you go in, you could put a roof on and have a lovely home.
So
Nothing broke down.
imagine this is 8,000, it's at the top of a mountain, that's 8,000 feet, right? So this is worth much lower than Cusco now, right? But I think they said there's something like 3,000 visitors a day. Once this was discovered, people started coming there. So 3,000 visitors a day. So you get there, and they're very strict about, what you can bring in, and about trash, and about maintaining the site, and all that sort of stuff. And there are huge numbers of people just waiting to get in, to pay, to walk up to the
But then
top.
before we got that, you go into this town, and every single hotel is called the Machu Picchu. So do not go without knowing the name of your hotel. We forgot our paper. So we went up to someone and said, could you help us? We're trying to get to our hotel. It's called the Machu Picchu something. And they said, well, look around. Every single hotel is the Machu Picchu something.
Right, and the town was called Aguas Calientes.
And it's
Right, so.
It's all little, like, hostel hotels. If you go, I just want you to be prepared. It's supposed to be like that too, right? So be prepared,
So,
It's just one night.
right, so you take a train to Aguas Calientes, and we were told that the guide would meet us there, right? He was gonna have a sign with our name. So we get off the train, and we're looking for the guide with our name, with a sign. This whole station is empty, we can't find anything. And Jeanette said, we don't know the name of our hotel. I said, I figured the guy was gonna be there. I didn't want to bring all this stuff. Because they said, just bring an overnight bag, right? Don't bring your whole thing from your whole trip, just leave it at the hotel. So anyway, it was an adventure. They finally found us. We found somebody with a phone who spoke English.
It didn't feel scary.
Right, I felt scared.
There were there were police everywhere saying, can we help you? Come on, we'll take you over to the station, we'll figure this out, no problem. That's how it was. So it wasn't like we felt it wasn't unsafe. There were a lot of people around. It's just like the visitors travel a little town.
But the way we finally found our hotel was we called our friend in Ecuador on WhatsApp.
Yes, have WhatsApp when you travel.
She organized the trip. I always say, use WhatsApp, right? Get everybody's phone numbers now. We called our friend in Ecuador, woke her up. She called a travel friend of hers who organized this, who got us the name of the hotel, called the guide, who then came and found us. So that was exciting. Okay. So now we're going to show you pictures of Machu Picchu, which these are just, to me, this is the highlight of the trip.
Go back one though.
Sure.
That's it. So when you're standing there, first you say, but what? Where is it? What's going on? Why did we come up here? Because you're looking at this. And then all of a sudden, the clouds start to clear. And then you say, oh, that's what we're looking at.
Right.
And it just constantly cycles like this, with the clouds coming and going.
Right, because we went really early in the morning, didn't we?
Oh,
Like
always
5:30?
early in the morning.
Really early, so the cloud is right there. Okay, so you see it lifting a little bit now? But as Jeanette said, the whole thing was covered with fog. Look at how steep this is here, right? I mean, we did the whole thing. It was like a whole day. And you could see.
Climbing-wise, it wasn't too bad. It was very, very hopeful not to go with a big group. Because when we said we're tired, we're tired. We're not going anymore. We're just going to stand here until we catch our breath. And that was really helpful. I mean, I thought I was going to shake.
What's this down here? This is a river. This is called the Urubamba River, which runs all the way through the Cusco Valley. Okay, there we are. Okay, let's see. Okay, again, you can see in the background, but there's more to show here. Okay, so this is one of their rock quarries, right? And same here. So Jeanette was mentioning that how they use the cracks, the natural cracks in the rocks to kind of carve. And they didn't have steel then, right? They only had soft metals besides not having a wheel, right? So how they did this is kind of miraculous. But this rock
They would use a harder stone
right.
to break down other stones. That's what they had. And so then you often would see, like they would break this up, but they would leave what didn't have any fractures in it. And then they would start building that as part of the wall into the existing rock. So you'd see this, I think we'll see a few of them.
Yeah, so one of the theories they told us in terms of moving those huge rocks was that since there was no money, people worked in exchange for food, in exchange for having access to land or a place to live or whatever, that there would be could be anywhere from 10 to 40,000 workers who were mostly the men because the women were having children and doing that kind of stuff, very sexist kind of society. There could be 10 to 40,000 men. And the theory is that they had these huge things that they would roll the rocks on somehow.
A tree.
Trees that were down, and they had ropes tied, and they literally were just using manual.
Hundreds of people would pull,
yeah.
and hundreds of people would push.
So I still
And
can't
so
figure out.
they're not slaves. Remember, these aren't slaves. The emperor said, we need to be safe, we need to have food, and I need you to come and work on this. I have this grand plan. Come, I will feed you, I will take care of you during that time. But except they died. But it was okay because they were going back to Pachamama, going back to Mother Earth. So they were happy, they said.
Right, and that was their belief. Pachamama.
That was their belief, you know.
Yeah. Pachamama.
Pachamama, who is the name of our dog now.
Right, we call her Pachamama. We
Pachamama.
call her Pachi for short. We should have put a picture of her.
Oh, we should have. Oh, well.
All right, so more of Machu Picchu. You can see the structures are really, again, this is that trapezoidal shape that you see here, right? This was entering into sleeping quarters. Right behind here was someone's, quote, room. And all they had was a dirt floor. I guess they used straw or whatever. And they slept on the floor, and they had communal kitchens.
Because they were just there for a while.
Right.
They were just doing their service, they maybe do a year, and then they were guaranteed food and a safe place to be for the rest of their lives. But they had to do this.
And what year did you say this thing?
1400.
And then in 1530, they virtually disappeared. Right.
Not a very long time.
No.
Not a very long
Not
time.
long.
It was one of the fastest projects that you can, can't you imagine how fast this thing got done?
But Pachacutec was an Incan emperor that really had a vision. He was the first one that came along and had a vision for creating Machu Picchu. Here, we put this in because we wanted you to see how they would integrate the stones that they cut with the natural rock formations, to form a wall or moving up to a staircase or whatever. So this one was not, so carefully, meticulously done as you see these outside walls versus the inside ones. And some of the steps were quite high to get up.
All right, so you see this is all just pieces of rock that are one piece one piece, and then they integrated. So they had this artistic sense too. And they also cut all their windows so that the light went right through, all the way through the building, so it lit every single room. And then they knew when it was time to harvest by the way the light went through the window and where it hit. And this was all just part of the design.
And wasn't this was like a rock where they did some animal sacrifices too, with those, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. That's just a great shot looking up, and I mean, if people walk here,
But this was all for planting. This was all about agriculture. It was about growing coca. It was about growing corn.
Sure. Okay.
See how they built right up to that huge rock.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. This was kind of a temple that they had at the top.
They said they had visiting, like,
Visiting
holy men
dignitaries.
that would come through and they'd stay days and go through. What'd you say?
Visiting dignitaries.
Dignitaries, right.
Yeah. I mean, look at the intricacy of this. I mean, I know we put a lot of pictures of this in, but it was really astounding to look at, to see how they built this and what remained and how just the roofs were gone, right? How they captured water. Okay, this is the view of the thing we just saw. This is a thing way up on top, built on top of this existing rock. And people walked all the way up here. We got up there too. That was quite a view.
They used thatch roofs. They were all thatched. So there was an earthquake. There were earthquakes there. And that's as much damage as it was done. It didn't fall over. It just kind of pulled things apart. And that's what's so amazing.
We should learn from that, right? Okay. Any thoughts about this? Any thoughts about what this might be, this rock? Okay, points north, south, east, and west. True north. And they use this to just track things, to know which way they were facing. How they figured out where to put it, we don't know. But this was right in the center of Machu Picchu. Again, grazing lands, basically llamas, alpacas. Did we see goats? I don't think we did.
Not this element.
Not up here, yeah. But again, you can see that, and there were areas of Machu Picchu where the workers lived versus where the royalty lived. They were separate areas. And I think that this is where the royalty lived. The part we showed you before was where the workers lived, all those buildings close together with no roofs, right?
They said they left early in the morning and they came back late at night, and then there were some women there who did do,
Just to sleep.
obviously, the cooking and cleaning.
Kind of like what we do, right, all of us here?
Mhm.
Okay. Again, the integration of the existing rock with the new stones added on, the trapezoid, and you keep seeing continuous scenes here, right? That's kind of a cool close-up. And you can see the trails along here where people walk up the steps. You could go this way and then up. There were different ways to get up
And
there.
there were earthquakes. Nothing's falling down. I mean, I can't get my retaining wall to stay up on a rainy year. Right? It's amazing.
And what is this? Anybody? Yes? Starts with a C. H. Chinchilla.
Oh,
We
wild
thought it was a rabbit
chinchilla.
also. All of a sudden Jeanette's like, look at that, look at that.
They said, oh, we have wild chinchillas. We don't get to see them much. There aren't that many. And up popped a chinchilla.
Okay, and this is by our hotel, just so you can see the contrast, the sort of modernness in the city, right? We have a couple of close-ups of some of our animal friends. We visited a place where they have the animals and where they harvest, I don't know if harvest is the right word. I guess harvest the wool, spin it, stretch it, dye it. We showed you how they get some of the colors, right? To me, the colors are like the most beautiful, right?
But it wasn't like you could find this wool stuff everywhere. It was really controlled. You had to go to the stores that had the licenses, and then everything was licensed. I mean, and they had control over all the animals, no land animals could leave. But if you went, there was like almost nothing to buy, you know?
Slippers.
Right, so you see what we came home with, I mean, really, that's it.
So on the way back from Machu Picchu, we took some pictures driving back through the Cusco area, back to Cusco.
But now, just one second, to get up to Machu Picchu, there are 3 ways, I think. One is by train. We took the train. And it's nice, the top is, it's all glass, so you can see as you're going. Another way is to walk. That's
Oh,
that
yeah.
trail they talk about.
The Inca Trail.
The Inca Trail, 4 days. People did it, I saw them do it. And then the third way,
I don't know, we didn't do the Inca Trail.
I guess you could drive up, but I didn't see anyone doing that.
So this is on the way back to Cusco again, just to see what it looks like, the surrounding area, the Sacred Valley, the terracing. Now, these are not functional terraces anymore, but these are terraces.
Just keep from, they're functional in that they keep it from landslide, which is pretty functional since everybody's living in the bottom. A lot of these people, not a lot, but enough of these folks, it didn't seem like there were homeless people there though. It didn't seem like that kind of poor. You know, where somehow people were living very simply, probably pretty subsistence. But in Cusco, the places around Cusco, we were told, like to buy an apartment was like $1 million. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Because I didn't see any millionaires walking around.
Here's Jeanette with her little,
The thing I love the most, I'm always finding the animals.
right, the animals. And again, you know, the women in traditional dress. You saw more women than men in traditional dress, but this was right across from our hotel. This woman sitting in the grass, this guy carrying, you know, a very kind of traditional view. And this is our final slide.
Everything seems to be dry. You know, I'm sure power is very, very expensive there, even though they have some fast waterways. Everything was really very basic everywhere we went.
Yeah. So that's the last slide. Questions, comments? We have a few minutes left.
Again, what were you guys eating? I mean,
You know, not much. I don't like quinoa. We tried to find some restaurants.
Well, the hotel served, you know, you could have breakfast. Now that was good.
American food.
You ate it because, you know, you want to experience it.
You know, they had fruit. They had this very liquidy kind of yogurt that you could put on your fruit. They had some kind of weird juices. They had bread. They had these little tiny things that were supposed to be croissants that were kind of dense. I guess because of the altitude, it's hard to get like really good bread. I mean, it's
It felt like,
pretty
a lot of stewed meat. It wasn't like a nice steak.
Did they eat
I'm all about food.
cornbread?
So it's all
No
about-
cornbread.
I had to let it go. It's pretty much stewed meat, potatoes, and
So no tortillas or things that you might expect?
Not really. No cornbread, no tortillas, nothing like that. You'd think they would since they had so much corn.
the
but
corn
no.
was like what we would give to our animals. So I wasn't big into it. Yeah, but it was that big.
And, you know, they do have
Like honey.
meat. They do have meat.
That's how
there.
big it was.
Yeah, we didn't really eat meat. Not much.
You know, I can remember if I ate. That's how insignificant the food part was.
We were so tired from flying that we just wanted to go to sleep at the end of the day.
Were these photos taken with cell phones or?
Yeah.
Yeah, cell phones. Everybody had cell phones there. Yep, everybody had cell phones. Very modern in that way.
Reception was okay with that?
Reception was great,
Really?
right? Reception was
And we
great.
use WhatsApp when we travel because you can make phone calls
Yes.
anywhere.
But cell towers everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, that technology totally exists. We had Wi-Fi in our hotel. Yeah, no issue with that at all. The roads were pretty terrible. We didn't have any pictures of that. I mean, you know, paved, gravelly, whatever, but not any, we weren't on any like modern highways or, you know, 2-lane highways, anything like that, the whole time we were in Cusco. So it was pretty,
How many days were you there for?
we were there, I guess, 5 nights, 6 days, something like that.
So why did you pick this particular city? Maybe I missed this.
Oh, because of the Incas and the history of the Incas. We were really interested in that. And also, southeastern Peru is very easy to get to from the Galapagos, from Ecuador. And we had a friend who lives in Ecuador. So we visited her at the beginning and end of the Galapagos trip, and then we went from Lima, which is a hugely modern city, very polluted, to Cusco. Yeah. And I guess the other thing I'd say, Penny, is Machu Picchu was really the goal. We really wanted to see that.
What was the climate like there? Up in,
It's between 58 and 70,
dry, wet?
pretty dry.
Although at Machu Picchu it was very wet there early in the morning with the fog, and then it kind of dried out.
Dries out,
Yeah.
What months did you go?
April. We went in
But it's
April.
kind of like that year around between 58 and 70.
Yeah.
About what it is.
How long did you stay in the Galapagos?
7 days. We were on the boat for 7 days, yeah. We got off, I think, once. Off onto land. Yeah, you were there too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Were you part of a group? I guess maybe I missed that.
In Peru, no. We had
Yeah.
our own driver and guide, two
Okay,
separate people. And it was, as I said, it was pretty inexpensive there to do that, and that worked out really well. The nice thing is that, there was like a rough itinerary, but if we wanted to change something or stop here or go there, they were great about that, so we could just do whatever we wanted.
Most importantly, you could stop when you were hiking.
Right,
Did I
we
mention
don't want to
that?
climb anymore, we're done,
You take
You know.
a cruise?
But I saw, the big busloads of people, they couldn't stop, keep stopping, for everybody was out of breath.
Yeah. What was
You
your-
were on a cruise for the Galapagos?
It's a boat, right, it's a 7-day thing on a boat, so it was, I think, what?
Yeah, about 30,
30,
people.
30, yeah, 30.
We were on about a
Right,
medium-sized boat,
16
34
cabins,
people.
32 people, yeah.
12, 16 is about the average.
Who planned this trip like that?
A friend of mine does it kind of for fun, and she tries to cover some of her own expenses. And she's organized all the trips that we've gone on to Namibia and all these others. But this Peru thing we did on our own. She organized the Galapagos. It was a wonderful boat, and we had nature guides and all that sort of stuff.
How did you secure guides?
How do you what?
How do you secure a guide?
Oh, well, our friend who lives in Ecuador was in the travel business, so she found somebody for us and kind of set it all up. So we didn't really have to do it on our own. But we're going to Israel in April, and we found a local tour company that we're working directly with. And I just emailed back and forth, and we just put together a trip. And it costs about half as much as it would cost if you did it through a travel agency here, because you check. Because they have all their markups, and they're coordinating for you, and they're doing whatever. But if you work directly, if you're not nervous about doing that, and these people all speak English, we set up this trip in, half as much. So,
Will you come back and talk about Israel and the
Yes, yes, Israel and Petra. Yes,
Very good.
all the varieties of potatoes in the vodka.
not really.
Alcohol wasn't a thing there.
We don't really drink, so.
But alcohol wasn't a thing, coca. The chewing on the coca leaves was really the only, they did say people are becoming alcoholics, but it wasn't any particular alcohol. But it's just another
I mean, there
thing.
were bars, but there, in restaurants, but I didn't really notice bars, the way we have bars everywhere here, I did not
And
notice
it
that at all.
wasn't any kind of traditional drink,
No.
wasn't,
I
right?
was curious because I heard there's a lot of traditional medicine in the mountains,
Mm-hmm.
and using telemedicine too,
Hmm.
to try to connect.
Oh, bring people in. They just had a new hospital in Cusco where they didn't have before. So people that really, and that's a big thing, trying to get people to start using the public services that they're starting to create, like going to the hospital, coming down and getting it taken care of, not dying of.
Beautiful teeth from the smiles I saw, really happy. And I was curious about the school systems. What are they like? Are they traditional, like kindergarten through 12th grade, or is it more about the farming, or?
They seem pretty traditional to me. You saw kids in uniforms going off to school.
We didn't get to
coming
go
home from
to a
school.
school
We
on this
Probably
one.
in the cities are big,
Mhm.
schools in Lima.
Yeah. One of the interesting things while we were there, and then we're going to wrap up, one of the interesting things while we were there is Venezuela was going through and is still going through this horrible economic crisis. And a lot of people were coming from Venezuela into Peru, into Cusco. and they had a huge, overload of people, and they were really struggling to deal with that, how to support those people and what to do with them.
Oh, it was getting very bad.
So I think one last
Because it's the
question.
classic, they're starving, so they come and they'll do a job for $5 when the people who live there are getting paid $20 for that. So who are they gonna hire? They're gonna hire the $5 guy, and now all of a sudden, the resident people can't find jobs.
So one last question, anybody? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was very interesting. And we'd like to book you for Janet.
Okay.
I also wanted to mention that next month, in November, I'm not sure of the date, but the flyer is on the table over there. Christina, who's right there, you can raise your hand, Christina. Christina Muller, who works at this library, is going to do an armchair traveler program about a week she spent kind of living off the grid. So I hope you will join us for that. And thanks again for a wonderful evening to both of you, Ellen and Jeanette.